Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Coach's Corner. I'm fired up about this episode because, sometimes when we talk about what are we going to talk about in the next episode, I've got a weird idea, of course, and Mike has got a different ideas, and then we got to figure out, okay, who has the best weird idea for this episode. But I love it when the zeitgeist matches, and it comes together. So when we were talking, Scott said he's got this approach to conferences, and he called it analog is the new digital. And I just had to smile because I've been pushing this hard in my firm for a while. A woman named Ashira Diora wrote an article called Analog is the New Digital in 2021, followed up by a book by David Sachs called The Future is Analog. And there's another very well-known business writer, Robert Hassan, who said, here's what technology does. It increases our craving for warmth, for tactility, for human touch. And so I've been really big here about if you don't differentiate yourself from other people, then the customer defaults to the lowest price. So we have this whole industry that Scott put his pulse on of, oh my God, I got to find the best AI tool. I got to find people who know how to use those AI tools. And it's a rush to changing our workflow so that we can say to clients, we're AI infused and we get AI and we can find you these people faster. And I'm sitting back going, how much faster do you need to find them? We already can find them in the blink of an eye. It's not about finding them. If we're in a race to find people the fastest, then the companies with talent act departments that have $500 million budgets are going to kick our butts, right? So I've been big on you differentiate yourself by making phone calls and by refusing to say, I'm going to ask chat how to solve this problem, and then I'll send it to the candidate. So I've been on this warpath all year, and we're seeing some results. So, Scott, it just struck me when you said that. And I know you were talking about how to get away from the trap of everybody sending the same emails, some not even being sent by them, by chat, to clients, and they're disappointed that they're not getting the job orders they used to get. And you were saying in your legal niche, you've gone analog. So let's jump into that. Tell me about how you've done it and what has resonated for you.
I think the overarching focus is what's your strategy. And I think my strategy is all about building trust. In one word, it's trust. How do you build trust? Well, a lot of it's built on one conversation at a time. But if you look at it in a different way, it's interactions with people. Some of those interactions can be they see your video, or they hear you as a guest on a podcast, or I produce a podcast. So many times I'm building trust with people before I've even talked with them, because I go very deep in my conversations with people. But I think the name of the game is building trust. And if you look at all the AI tools out there, they're really good on the front end of the process, but what's going to be the AI tool that helps you close the deal? I don't know if there ever could be one. And because of the human nature of being guarded, this is a scary change. If I make the wrong move, it's going to be the end of my career and my livelihood. And so I just focus on, okay, everybody else is looking at what's the new sexy tech tool, and no judgment, that's fine. I'd love all my competition to focus on that. And instead, I'm going to focus on how can I build trust with people. Now, I will use technology as a way to help me build that trust and take that trust to the market. But without, and this is just my own philosophy, and this year is my second best year ever. In my company, it's me and 3 full-time staff, because I'm a big believer in delegating things that I don't have to do that keep me away from being on the phone and in front of people. Everything else, I'm going to hire somebody to do that. And so I think it goes to what is it in your business that's going to help you succeed? Start with that. And then can you find tools and technology to help you reach that goal? So that's why, and I've noticed, and it's interesting, my son, he's 25, he joined a company called Soon Technologies, where it's a well-funded startup in the tech area. He's in San Francisco. They had their launch 2 weeks ago, and they're using old form video interviewing to create documentaries interviewing new tech startups. And he's actually one of the hosts of that, of, doing the interviews and things like that. And I met his president, his mentor, which is great that he's 25. He has a mentor, he's in the office every day. It's not virtual, which is what I think everybody in their 20s needs. And I even told him, I said, analog's the new digital. I said, you're taking old form technology as your business development niche. Who else is doing this in your space? Nobody. So I think analog is a new digital. It's an open playing ground for people that want to go back to 1990s recruiting and be on the phone. But you've got to be smart about that and don't not use AI. But don't spend $1,000 a month learning how to use tech tools that you really should be delegating to somebody else to help build those lists, et cetera. Keep the focus where it really counts. Keep the main thing, build trust.
Okay. Yeah, and we're going to dig into some specifics people can use, especially on the client side, because I think people will say, "Yeah, I can get candidates on the phone. I can't get clients on the phone. They're much harder." And then when I mentor people, I see that you didn't try. Like they'll send an email, they'll send me an email saying, "I'm sending this email to the client who hasn't gotten back to me after a great intake call, and it's frustrating me. So, what do you think of this email?" And I always just say, uh, here's a better email. When can we talk? I'll make it quick. I promise. Are you? Can I call you right now? And dial the phone. And they get frustrated because they just wrote this wonderfully long email that nobody's going to read. Um, and I guess Mike, tell me if you agree before we get specific. Um, Scott and I think the front end, yeah, you better turbo tech it, and you better be asking the right prompts to your LLM, and that is how you're going to get the right information. And uh, the way that recruiters planned their day, even a year ago, has changed dramatically in my office. So, are we agreed that the front end should be technology based, and you should brag about the fact that yeah, you're with it, you get it, yeah, you use this stuff, but then we draw a line and say here is where we go analog, to use Scott's phrase, meaning we're going to touch the client, the candidate. We cannot do this part of our business without it, and you don't want us to. Are you in the same mindset?
Excuse me, 100%. I forgot who said this. AI is not going to replace recruiters. AI will replace some recruiters who don't know how to use AI in their recruiting business.
Yeah.
Right. So, Danny, when I got in, I was filling out 3x5 cards for candidates and 5x8 cards for companies. That was my database. Right. So if I stayed there, could I make a living in this business? Yes,
Yeah.
because it was still, it take a lot of time.
Right. Right.
I was home at night on my coffee table writing these things out. Then you have to sort from memory, or you have to have a really good filing system. So all those things would still work, but at the core, nothing changed.
Right.
Without repeating everything you said, I trust Danny Cale because you know what? I've talked to him. The guy gets me. He understands me. He shows me opportunities if interested in. Or if you're the hiring manager, he always finds us good people. The beauty of AI is it saves time, especially operationally. The way the different platforms, we could talk about that, they integrate with your databases. I even had a conversation, when we get into the technique, one of our partners, because I've never, no one's going to trust a gray-haired guy to say he's the developer of AI software, right? It's got to be somebody under 30. And I'm like, no, we're just going to be a great portal for some of the best AI providers to the recruiting industry that we vetted through our clients. And you're going to see that I think some of these CRMs are in trouble because I think AI, some of these people that are doing the AI and that second stage stuff, note-taking, sorting, qualifying the notes, that can just become your CRM. That's a kind of an evolution I think we're going to see in the next 2 or 3 years. But back to your point, emails don't build trust. Texts don't build trust or relationship. They're great starting points.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Scott, you mentioned in our prep call that a great example of this is the way you handle going to conferences, and I want to talk about that because conferences are the ultimate live event, right? And so this is analog in practice, right? I mean, you talk about conferences. I've never had a year here where I didn't have a 6-figure budget for trade shows, and it took me a long time because I'm cheap to say, is it really worth it for me to send Mike to Las Vegas for 3 days. He'll be off his desk for 3 days. He'll be at this, conference, but all 300 of his clients are there for 3 days. Yeah, that plane trip and that hotels, and yeah, I give him some extra money to schmooze a little bit, and I always keep some money on the side to bail them out because my people are crazy. But they've learned how to work a trade show, and 3 weeks before a trade show, all their calls were about, I'm going to Vegas. Am I going to see you there? Let's set up some time. And all the calls 3 weeks after Vegas are, it was great to see you in Vegas. I'm sorry I missed you in Vegas. Here's what I found in Vegas. It is literally like 6 weeks of work. But, someone like Alex in my life sciences department, he goes 2-3 times a year. And I wouldn't say most, but he could not do half of his business without those shows. And what happens at those shows? He meets these people live. And you've got a very specific legal niche and a specific sort of way you do it. So talk about how you see conferences and how you do it.
I'll put it the way Gary Miller put it when I interviewed him on the Rainmaking podcast. You guys know Gary in Chicago.
Sure.
He's been in the business a long time. And he said, conferences are a big part of it. When you're there, and as you're putting another shrimp on your plate, you turn to the guy next to you. Where are you from? Where are you from? What do you do? I do life sciences. I own a biotech company. What do you do? I actually recruit in the life sciences industry. Oh, we should talk that quick.
Yeah.
Is that worth it? How much was that conference? $1,800 for the registration, about another $1,500 for the hotel, about another $1,200 for the flight, about another $1,000 for food and beverage. Was it worth it? Absolutely right.
Right.
And I think out of, I mentioned this before, out of 100 recruiters in the industry, only one of them is really going to do well. Because 99, I don't want to go there. I don't want to spend the money. That one person that says, I'm going to make that happen. And not just that, I'm going to see if I can be a helpful steward of my time for the trade association. Right. You get involved in it. You sit on their board. One of the things I do, I produce the Rainmaking podcast. I'm a guest on this show. I also produce a podcast for my clients' largest trade association. 3,000 members of law firm recruiting departments. We're in our second year. And so I've been able to find a way to bring value to them just through creative interests that help them propagate their message through a different modality to get to their constituents. And I get visibility. How much does it cost? A couple $100 a month for me to manage all that stuff. So I'm able to use technology to insert myself in the path of those people so that if they have a need, they call me by being a useful servant to others to help them reach their goals. But bringing it to the conferences, I'm doing the same thing. I'm producing a 7-part conference series for a trade association conference within the legal industry. They didn't choose me to speak at their conference this year because I spoke 2 years ago when I said, why don't I do a 7-series short conference podcast to promote your events to your members? Mm-hmm. And, they got back to me 20 minutes later. That's a great idea. So now we're setting up, I'm interviewing 7 of their speakers that they did choose. And they're comping me a gold level sponsorship thing. So I've found ways to use creativity to be at a point where now you're not just different, you're distinct. And you create. And I think if recruiters can create this, you want to create an unfair competitive advantage.
Yeah.
You want to create so much value to your clients and your candidates that it's just not fair for your competition. I'm so sorry.
You don't have to. People think I have to go to. When I first started bringing people to trade shows, they were very reluctant to walk up to somebody because they're like, it's going to seem so schmaltzy. It's so salesy. Hi, here's my card. I'm a recruiter. Do you have any job orders? I'm like, dude, I'll be your wingman. That's not how it works. We're not going to talk. We're not going to ask anybody for business. We're just going to meet people. We're just going to ask that. We're trying to be interesting people. And yeah, it'll come out in the course of what we do if they ask. But we're not selling to anybody. And yeah, I don't think I can remember a show where I've sent recruiters where they didn't come back with 6-7 leads, a couple retainers. I mean, it's just not as salesy as it seems to people. But I tell all my recruiters, and by the way, I mean, I'm glad I don't do it anymore because I think you should leave those trade shows or conferences exhausted.
And analog is a new digital. I went to a conference, 40-ish of people that I know. I've met them. Maybe I presented candidates to them. Maybe I want to get to know them. I met them. I either saw them, shook their hand, got a hug, waved across the room. I went home. I wrote 42 handwritten, nice to see you cards, and I sent them out via snail mail. And guess what? Clients email me back. I do that too. Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
We've got a search. Can you help us with something? And it
Yeah.
helps you to do what I mentioned before, build trust. How
Yeah.
can you build trust with people? And so that's old school. Analog is new digital. How can you be distinct and do things that nobody else does to show, wow, this is someone that we can trust? So that's part of the playbook that I follow, Danny.
Yeah. I love
You
that.
know,
I love that. Mike, is that conferences, trade shows always been part of
Yeah, so
your
the
sweet spot?
first one I went to, I think it was Land World in the early 90s at the Javits Center. Um, and I did exactly what you're not supposed to do. So from like what I learned from a mentor, there's no dishonor in failure. There's only dishonor in not learning from that failure. I would walk up,
great.
hi, I'm Mike, I'm a recruiter. I remember this one guy had this big, I'll never forget because it just still triggers me. He had this great smile. I'm walking up to his booth because I would always be conscious not to have a booth full of people. They're selling. And he's handed me a brochure and I tell him who I was and he pulls the brochure back to his chest. His whole demeanor changes. And when you work a show, and we teach this a lot to our clients, it's not just what you said, Danny, but pull all your clients, prospects you're going to get together, send out an email blast or on the phone. I'd be like, hey, Danny, you're going to be at the XYZ show in 2 weeks. And you might say, no, actually, my guys are going to work it this year. So I walk up, I see Scott in the booth. I know you're not going to be there. I go, where's Danny?
Right.
And he's not working the show this week. Oh my gosh. So now I'm implied invited because I know you. And the same thing. I don't go, oh, Scott, what are you, the director of sales for the Eastern region? Do you have any? No. Right. But just to be comfortable, a little bit of prep, or you might be there. And now I have, I've got to buy 24 cups of coffee or some lunches and things like that. To your point, I'm full, I'm tired, my feet hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk to anybody for 3 days after.
Right. That's when you know you've done it right. Yeah.
And so when people get cheap, recruiters that is, because they have to buy a plane ticket and a hotel or a ticket to the event, I'm like, I don't know. And I think the 1 day on a show floor is equivalent of a month on the phone.
Right.
From a standpoint of impact and results.
100%. And not only that, but when you get back, now you get a trade show list because they give you the attendees list. But you also know of all the companies that are in your space. So it's easy to follow up with the people you met. But we normally have an email response rate when we just send cold outreach to clients looking for business, 5, 7, 8%. It's horrible. But when the subject line is, here's what you missed at the DEA show, and now I have a 10-point bulletin of what you missed. Happy to talk some more. That response rate exceeds 70%. Wow. It's just curiosity, right? It's like, oh yeah, I didn't go to that show. Now those people have some latent guilt because they know they should have gone to the show. So now they want to open it, and now you're giving them something that they're interested in, and they can't help but make the connection of, Jonta, this guy's sharp, right? Like this is a smart thing that he sent me. The other thing, talking about cheap recruiters, for an extra, depending on the conference, for a recruiting conference, if it's someone introducing me or you or Scott, they might pay $2,000. Maybe at a big conference like a life sciences, it might be $4,000 or $5,000. So I get that that's not in everybody's budget. But, Scott said, well, he didn't speak this year. Well, there's going to be years when you can't speak, and there's a lot of recruiters who don't want to speak. But for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, you can introduce the keynote speaker or introduce one of the speakers. You've paid for I was always amazed because, I travel with Joanne, and I'm like, Joanne knows how to introduce me, and we have a little shtick going, and we can always make people laugh with the introduction. And people are like, oh no, Mike is introducing you. He paid $4,000 to introduce you. And think about how smart that is. This guy has got every single person in the conference at a keynote looking at him for 60 seconds, right? Hi, I know you're all here to listen to Danny, so I'll make this short. I'm so-and-so. Here's my company. Here's what we do. Say something quick, sharp, witty. If anybody wants to talk about it, I'm here for the next 2 days. Walk off. I'm telling you, I can't I can't tell you how many people in the recruiting industry have told me, very well-known software companies or vendors in recruiting who've told me how much business they've gotten from paying for an intro of me at a keynote.
And one thing you said, and I just create a consciousness. You said, well, maybe they don't have a budget for it. I hate the word budget when it comes to investment.
Especially BD. Yeah.
Budget is something I have to spend. And do I want to, limit my office supplies? Like, I'm trying to think about even office supplies, you could call it investment. If you go by metrics, right, on a conservative basis, every first-time interview a recruiter arranges is at least $3,000 for most recruiters. It's 3, 4, 5 from all of the data I've studied over the years, right? So my mindset has to be, I'm going to work this show for 2 days, and I invest $5,000 to be there, maybe 7, including like an intro or something like you said, Danny. All right. In the course of that period of time, with all the dust I'm going to kick up, with all the credibility I'm going to kick up, with all the relationships I enhance, do I foresee that I can get at least 2 interviews out of that over the next 30 or 60 days,
right,
a break even, versus, no, I'm probably going to get 10, 12, 15, and then the lifetime value of those clients, because most of us, when we make a placement for the first time with a company, we're going to make number 2 and number 3 and number 4 over a period of time, where these types of things, we have to change the paradigm of it's expensive into how do we capture the ROI?
Right. How many send outs does it take to pay for that?
The first time I was always big on trade shows. Then I had a team in my office. They wanted to have a booth and they knew I was cheap. So they wanted to go to a little regional show that they could drive to. So I'd have to pay for plane tickets. And it was going to be a total of about $3,000 or $4,000 to have a booth there. And I said, show me the business from that, and then I'll invest in a booth in Las Vegas, which is 20, 30, And they came back, we identified within 90 days, $70,000 in business they got from the small regional show. So I could say as an owner, $3,000 is too expensive to send you guys. And then I would have foregone $67,000 in net billing.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I personally, just as a sidebar, I bought a booth, which is in a closet here. Once a year, I put it up, and just people walk by me and they go, "What is wrong with him?" Because we found booths confine us, and we want to wander the show, and we want to be mobile. Because a lot of times we'll see. Because remember, guys, you're also recruiting at these things. We're talking about the client side, but you're going to see some wonderful candidates there, and you say, "Hey, let's go get a drink in the bar and talk about this opportunity I have." But I got to be able to leave the booth and go do that. So I haven't seen an ROI on the booth. The other thing I would say, because I don't want people to get the wrong impression, Scott is talking about conferences in the legal niche. I'm talking about conferences in my various sectors: life science, digital health, insurance. I would not send recruiters to job fairs. That's a very, very different thing. Then I think you'd be better off just making calls on the phone.
So doing low-level administrative, right? Staffing type
potentially
stuff.
Yeah. So okay, so I just want to share some things that we do and some things I've heard from mentoring that might inspire you guys to think about other things you're doing. Because what we're really talking about, if we're going to say analog is the new digital, is we're saying let's invest in relational equity. Like relationship equity is really what it's all about, and it doesn't have to be. So far we're talking about the big investment, but it's little things. It's how many of you have said to candidates, make sure you send a handwritten note because that's a nice touch. Well, why don't you send handwritten notes to clients after you've had a good intake call or after a placement? I even have people who work at a higher levels who send thank you notes to candidates, and it comes in the mail, and it's wild to get something in the mail. That's analog. Right? I've got a really good client who's $1 million producer who says, I don't send pitch decks anymore. Right? For a long time, it was like, oh, I got to get my stuff together. And I'll hear recruiters all the time saying, okay, so Scott, nice to talk to you. Let me send you my deck and you'll get a sense of what my company's all about. This guy goes, no, my deck became my lookbook. He sends clients lookbooks, which are tactile, which are memorable, which show craft, and they're just fun. Like they're really nicely done, and they're not as expensive as they used to be. So he differentiates himself by saying, "I'm the recruiter with the lookbook. I don't send decks." That's where he puts analog into the placement process, right? So I need you guys to do the same thing you've been doing with AI. If you're doing AI right, you're going through your workflow and saying, what prompts can I ask here that would automate that part of the workflow, right? And that's smart. And I think you'd find, like Scott and Mike are saying, that mostly it's on the front end, right? But I'm saying go through your workflow and say, how can I analog this? What part of this can I make old school? There's a woman that works for me, Jen Millay, one of my partners. She goes to chamber meetings. Now she works a local market, and there's a lot of people on this call that work local markets. And I told her, Jen, don't bother going to chamber meetings. Like that's 15, 20 companies in the local area. But guess what? It's not your daddy's chamber meeting anymore because so many people started working remote. They may live in Connecticut, but their businesses are all over the place. And she does a mini version of what Scott is talking about. She's on the membership committee. She sets up venues. She brings coffee. She is on the budgeting of all these. She's the Miss Cheshire Chamber person here, and she gets tons of business from it. And so when she says to me, "I'm not going to be in tomorrow, there's a chamber thing," I say, "Have a nice day. Have a nice day." So you guys get me what I'm saying? It's like, just ask yourself, where can I put a personal human touch in this process that I have been taken for granted for so long? Another example, voice memos instead of emails. There's an analog, touch in a digital technology, right? Everybody's reading emails. People are starting to send me voice memos, and I'm like, oh, that's really smart because that's more human. I get to get.
What do you think about a Loom video, sending a short video message? Hey, Jerry, we've never spoken before. And then you have their profile up on you. I looked at your profile because you worked here. I thought you might be a good fit for here. Is that too stalkerish? Would that freak people out? Or would they say, oh, this guy's really trying?
Scott, we've tried it. We've used Hinterview instead of Loom, but they're all the same. And we were disappointed in the response rate. I honestly don't know why, though. It makes perfect sense to me, and I think it fits into what we're talking about. I think part of it is because most of my people have a face made for radio. Maybe that's it. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to work for us. What do you think? What do you think, Mike? Do you send those little videos?
There's an application we just started playing with called SendSpark. I got nothing. I have no affiliation with them yet. Somebody I probably want to partner with. What I liked about them was if you have an NPC or you have a message or whatever, and you load your list in there, your email list, it'll go find their domains, and you click on it, and it'll be, hey, Danny, it's Mike, from the Recruiter U. And then the common message after that is the same. AI changes my voice for every human being, and it has my video, and their website is scrolling in the background. So it screams, this is sent just to me, but you can do those at 100, 200 at a pop.
Yeah.
And I enrolled in it because it worked. I'm seeing the visuals of my website in the background. I'm like, who the heck is this person? And she goes, and she was totally honest in it. It's not really me. It's an AI version of me, but it's my voice.
Yeah.
So video is enough because they've done studies that if you make YouTube videos and someone sees you on YouTube videos, that you're simultaneously given almost the same celebrity status as a movie star. Like there's something about video that is credibility building.
Interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things, short videos being sent instead of emails, that to me makes all the sense in the world for all the reasons we're talking about. And I'm fastidious with my metrics with the people I mentor. And I would say out of, say, 100, 10 are like, oh yeah, it's the way to go. And the other 90 go, I don't know why, but it doesn't seem, maybe it's just, we're still at a point, we're still evolving, where clients are used to opening up their phone, seeing there's a message, and they may be in a public place, or they may be in their mind, watching this video is going to take longer than reading this email. I don't know, but I think the response, and just as a aside, I don't know this company you're talking about, but a lot of times when I say to these companies, can you send me data? Show me the response rate of your videos versus somebody else in a recruiting firm. And they always go, we don't have that yet. We're building that. We'll get to that. And they never do. So I can't help but be a little suspicious. But I love the idea of it because it sticks with what we're talking about. To me, it's just like because I know there's people who work a national desk who are listening to this and going, yeah, but how do I do it nationally? How do I do analog at scale? And this is what I'm saying. You just got to be particular about go through your placement process. What is your normal onboarding? Well, we normally do this and this and this. Okay. How about a swag bag that you send to the candidate? If you place somebody, how many people are you placing? You can't send a swag bag. You can't invest $8,000 to have 200 swag bags for the placements you're going to make this year if you're successful. And it's little things like one guy that I mentor, I used to make fun of him about it. Now I think he's a genius because he still sends a one-page printed newsletter to his clients. Printed, mailed. And he says, if I don't send it, somebody goes, hey, where's my newsletter? And it is differentiating yourself from everybody else. So I think the message for today is just juxtapose, like instead of just being in the rat race of how do I seem AI cool and AI infused and AI smart, how do I separate myself from those who are trying to do that? Because if we all do it, if everybody's sending the same emails, because all chat does is synthesize what's already out there. So more and more people are saying, here's my BD message. What do you think? And I'm like, I can tell a chat message a million miles away. And we're all using the same tools to get the same results. So then along comes somebody who says, you're paying me a fee because I use tools up front to get candidates on the phone, but then I will not send you a candidate that I have not talked to. Even that, I think, if we start using that as marketing collateral, if you say, this is part of my agreement, that is how you differentiate. I don't think anybody here is going to win the race of, I use the most AI. I use more AI tools than Scott Love ever heard of. I don't like that argument as much as I meet everybody. There's a company in Denver that I work with who, mostly work the Denver market. So it's a little easier for them. And one of the women I mentor called me up and she was all proud. She said, guess what I came up with today? You're going to love this. And I said, what? She said, I had a company in Denver and they hired her. They gave her a retainer and they said they wanted to fill this job. And she said, well, you know what? You're just down the street. Why don't you come in and interview the people? And so the client came in, interviewed all 4 people on one day, and then hired somebody the next week. And she said, isn't that the most original thing you ever heard of? And I said, I'm glad you did it, but it was called Employer Ins. And it was how we did the business for 20 years.
Right.
CIO.
And her client was blown away. Right. Her client was blown away at what a great idea. When you get to host them, you're hosting an event, your client. You get to do the debrief right there live. She was scheduling second interviews. EIOs were the way we did the business. So I think, and I'm not trying to be a Luddite about this, right? Like everybody's got to understand. I don't want you to hear this and say, oh, they're against technology. No, and people misunderstand the Luddite myth, right? The Luddite myth is people who hate technology. But Luddite comes from the 19th century in England when they started getting rid of textile machines because they were able to automate it. And the textile workers revolted and started breaking the machines. And one of the guys was named Ludda, so they called them Luddites. Luddites were people that break machines because they're scared it's going to replace them. I'm not saying we're Luddites. I'm saying it's kind of ironic that the best way for you to come across like you're cooler than everybody is to go back to being analog in certain parts of the process, right? Any other thoughts before we wrap, guys?
Yeah, it's the opportunity to combine all the time-saving automation that AI provides, updating your database, all the things that are the necessary evils for you to stay accurate with your data, to increase the amount of face time you can have to build relationships.
Yes.
If you're like me, you're usually so far behind that you end up becoming ahead anyways. It's it's like full circle. Here we are.
Yeah. So I'll wrap it with this because I literally saw this on the way to work today. I don't know if you guys see it in your states, but you must, because I see it when I travel. There seems to be more advertisements on television and online for injury lawyers than ever before. Like, I don't know how many people are getting injured, but holy cow, these ambulance chasers are all over you if you've been injured, right? And I'm like, I just see them every other ad. It's like what Viagra commercials were like 20 years ago. It's like they're everywhere. And then on the way to work this morning, one of the most famous injury lawyers in Connecticut has this billboard on Route 84, exit 35, and there she is. And I'm like, oh, analog is the new digital. How do I separate myself from all my competition, making as many TV commercials as she always had? Let's put a billboard out. And I'm sure she'll do well with it because the analog is the new digital. All right, guys.
I'll leave it with one thing with that,
Mike,
Dan.
please.
I got a card and a letter from Google with a discount for advertising.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, if Anthropic sends a carrier pigeon into my office, we'll know the whole thing is out of control at this point. Yeah, gentlemen, as always, appreciate your time, and we'll do it again.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye now.